So today I have a good friend of mine here, someone I've seen his journey for the last few years evolve. And today he's becoming a force in the Nigerian space, helping a lot of young people. Today I would like to present to you our guest, Kennedy Ekezie.
Good to be here today. Really great to be here. I think it's an overdue conversation, and it'll be good to catch up to over the mic and camera. So
yes, good. It's very interesting, but I do think that I've seen you evolve from entrepreneurship to this, to almost becoming a platform where you're trying to power young people. But I would ask the question, take us back in time. Who was the one person in your life that shaped you, that gave you this paradigm that is becoming a movement today?
I talk about my mom quite often, so it definitely will be her. I think that there's a lot that I inadvertently learned from her, and I think the stats is clear that children tend to learn more from their mothers, their primary caregivers, which typically would be moms, and she provided the infrastructure, the psychological infrastructure, but even beyond the infrastructure, the tools. There's many times she, I butt heads with her for speaking wrong English, for using my tenses wrongly, for showing up in ways I should not have. She was very objective. When we had conflict with other people, she was not the sort of person, and is not the sort of person who would automatically just take the side of your side because you're her child. So it was, a lot of that was very character building, and I think that is the rawest material that constitutes who I am and who I've become and who I am becoming. There's that. We were also talking about this before we started, but when I was in secondary school, one of my teachers, who I talk about quite often, he taught me government. His name is Mr. Mo. I grew up in Calabar, in a relatively small town, and I met him when I was in SS1. This was a period where 3 years before I had done really terribly academically, and because we had moved to a new city, I was born in Lagos, we moved to Calabar. I started school a little later than other people, so cliques had formed. I really struggled to find, a social gang in some sense, and that affected me in ways I didn't even understand, but I just saw I was, bottom 20% of the class, which was not the way my academic history had gone before. But anyways, fast forward 3 years after, I went to this new school and I encountered him and started out with him, just butting heads with me, really. And it's like, you should get your acts right. And he would call me out very authoritatively, very publicly, and for me, that was just really annoying, and I just wanted him to stop doing that. So I started to get my work done. I started to write my notes. I started to do my homework, and slowly, I realized that I actually started to like that process of doing my homework, of going back home and being very curious about my homework. My dad teaches political science, and so Mr. M taught me government. And so when he gives us government homework, I'm very curious. I'll go ask my dad questions. I'll do the homework with him, and Mr. M was as generous with his praise as he was with his his blame. So when you were doing really well, he was vocal about that. He would give you a platform. There were times when I'll go on holiday and he'll be like, Kennedy, read up about. So one of the first assignments he gave me was, oh, your name is Kennedy. What do you know about the Kennedy family? And then I started, it's like, go and read about the Kennedy family. Next class we have, you're presenting to the whole class everything you know about the Kennedy family. So I went, my first point of call was in Qatar. I don't know if you remember in Qatar Premium, used that, learned everything, watched the assassination videos of JFK, learned about the family, his wife, her aristocratic background, learned about his uncles, his father, his nephews, like everything I could. I came to class the next time. We had no business. It wasn't in the curriculum, but he gave me 10 minutes out of a 50-minute class to just talk about that. And things like that really built my confidence. And that was who he was. I remember one of the to-go statuses I posted back then, Kennedy Ekezie is the house that Mr. M built. And in many ways, that was very true. So he's a force.
I love that. You've also shared with growing up in terms of growing up in university lecturers. Did that pressure you in any way?
Not really.
Of having parents who are academics, and the competition and the environment where lecturers and most of our parents tend to manage or measure their worth. directly or indirectly with the success of their children.
Okay, that was the
At the
case.
science and academic success. So sometimes coming from a place where you're doing well to a point where you're falling behind can build tension. But how was that relationship with your parents as you evolved?
Yeah.
And in the larger context of the Nigerian society where we are, our parents are great at their wing.
Yeah. So for sure, that I mean, the years where I was struggling, it was just not. My dad was very unhappy with me. My mom was also not pleased with me because when I was struggling in school, she was a teacher then before she started lecturing. So, and she taught at the same school. It was University of Calabasas Demonstration Secondary School. So her colleagues would go to him like, Kennedy's notes are terrible, in terrible shape. I didn't see Kennedy in class today, or he strolled in 20 minutes after class or study. Something along those lines. And, that wouldn't make a mom very happy with her son. So we struggled, but I also did not feel like my parents did not love me in those years. It still felt like they loved me. The day we collect results is always a very big day at home, because you're nervous. What is it going to be? Oh my God. It took me till like SS1 when I found Mr. Mem, when I started to do well, to not be nervous on those days. But for those 3 years, oh my God, just dread like results collection because it's going to be bad and like I'm going to get punished for being so, my parents are going to be unhappy with me for like a week after that. And every time I play during the holiday, they will remind me that I did badly. So, but I'll say I thought that was what every parent was like. So I thought every parent was like that. I just assumed they were parents, and I never thought of it through the lens of, okay, these are university lecturers, these are teachers, and this is what it's like. I didn't feel like it was special, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't assume that's what everyone has. But beyond that, the conditions at home was like every other home. It was jovial. There were lots of jokes. I mean, at some point, you just knew what you had to do. By the time I was in SS2, I was very self-motivated on my own. In many ways, that they even had to start because, so I became punctuality prefect as right around when I started SS2. So a lot of times I'll leave home. I was a day student by like 6:30 a.m. I'll wake up by 5. I was so enthused about my parents would be like, you're not getting enough sleep. You should get enough sleep. Like that now became the thing. No more you don't want to go to school and you're lazy. It became the exact opposite. I was obsessed. I wanted to do my job well. I would iron my uniforms, like, get it right. Take care of my books. I don't know how well I did on that front, and I could have done better, but I was really excited about that. And when I got into university and started to debate, oh my God, like they didn't have to manage that process anymore. Like, the snowball was just rolling. Yeah.
Someone said that one of the things that actually why we oftentimes get bored is because we do less of what makes us feel alive.
Yes.
Just even listening to what happens with Mr. MM was striking a part of you that was very central to your core.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm curious as to where you picked up the entrepreneurial side from.
I don't think there are different parts, of me, because so when I got into university, I was 16, and the first thing I did when I went to University of Calabar was to join the debate team. I probably did that before I finished my clearance. When you get into school, that was one of the first things I did. And I was a really bad public speaker then, started to get good, and I had a debate coach and a debate committee that recognized my potential and said, okay, we're going to, thankfully, I joined in September, literally September, and by December, I joined in August, and by September, I was selected to join. So 1 month in, a little over 1 month in, I was selected to join the team that was going for a debate competition in Ghana. There were 4 people, and so like 2 really good senior debaters. And because those senior debaters were going to graduate soon, they needed to start to train a bench of people, like younger debaters. So it's almost like I got a diversity slot, for that. But me and my friend Victor, and because they had recognized my potential and they thought that investing those resources in me will help me get well. So in September, we went for that. We won that competition. It was an African Universities Debate Championship, All African Universities Debate Championship. In December, got the opportunity to also go to South Africa, to go to Malaysia, to compete at the continental and at the world stages. And all of those really helped. But the following year, when I was in my second year and I was still growing as a debater, one of the things that just became like It's like, oh my God, we go to these debate competitions, we talk about all these things intellectually, concepts like feminism, social justice, but I felt very unsatisfied just talking about it cerebrally. So I went and gathered a group of friends of mine. It's like, what can we do with these things? How can we even teach other people? I think when you get to a certain level of, I don't know how to put it, of knowing, you want to bring other people along. It's you feel like you're not doing enough when you see other people going through problems are solvable. It's just like watching someone die, because they didn't have paracetamol. How annoying is that? And you knew that it may not be very easy, but if I worked hard at this, I could figure this out and solve for it. So we started a social enterprise at that time called the Calabar Youth Council for Women's Rights. And it was just a way, like, we know these things, but the society we live in is really not that. So
it was more like an advocacy movement.
Yes, it was an advocacy movement centered on access to rights for women, but specifically on ending the practice of female genital mutilation, starting in Calabar. And I did that for all 4 years. And so for me, that's where I'll say the underlying instinct for entrepreneurship comes from. It's, there's a problem and I know I really want to solve it. When I decided I was going to become an entrepreneur was in 2019. I was in China. I was working at TikTok at the time, and I was also writing my thesis for grad school. And I knew that I needed to make a decision for where to go next. And thankfully, I had the presence of some of my really good friends, people who I admired, who were around my age, and a lot of the people who I respected were going to build companies. And I thought, if all of these people are going to do this, my friends, like there's, 3 of my friends, they're Nigerian American, they rejected their jobs at Bain, Microsoft, and Facebook to move back to Nigeria to live in a village to build a company. I'm like, come on, like this is exactly what it is. This is exactly what it is. And they'll share their investor updates with me. I'll read it, we'll catch up. I'm just like, that's the life I want to live, like trying to solve a problem that's complex.